Hello. Anatomy and physiology are usually taught system by system. It's easier to organize it that way. But as you've probably noticed by now, the borders between systems are kind of blurry, they're fuzzy. Most organs and most cells are part of multiple systems. The best way to think about the systems are simple division into controlling systems and control systems. Controlling systems are the nervous, sensory, circadian, and endocrine systems. Again, those four are just kind of aspects or elements of the controlling system, and it's very hard to figure out which one is which because they are so kind of fused into one. Uh, Many parts of the body are parts of two or three or all four of those systems. For instance, the retina of the eye is part of the nervous system, part of the sensory system, part of the circadian system, and part of the endocrine system. So is the pineal, so is the hypothalamus, so is the intestinal nervous system. So there are a number of places in the body that belong to all four of these systems, and it may also, differ from species to species. But here we're talking mainly about humans because this is a human class. Um, so the controlling systems are scanning the environment, making the decisions. That would be the integrator, and then telling the rest of the system what to do. All the controlled systems uh, don't have the kind of a decision making power. They have know how to do one thing. The heart knows how to beat, and lungs know how to breathe, and the kidney knows how to filter urine, and that's about it. So, what the controlling systems do, they're going to tell the control systems when to start, whatever they are doing, what to when to end, whatever they're doing, when to speed up or slow down, whatever they're doing. So uh, the operative word here was when to start, when to end, when to speed up, when to slow down, uh, and that when uh, can be predictable or unpredictable. So when you study about stress response, it is about responding to uh, unpredictable aspects of the environment, internal or external. So they can happen at any time. And then, when something happens in the environment that requires the attention of the body, then the sensory, nervous, circadian, and endocrine system will work together, make a decision, and then tell all the controlled systems what to do at that point in time. So time is the key. Uh, so it's going, in case of stress, it's going to stimulate. That means increase, like tell it increase now. Uh, the muscular system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system is going to slow down, saying slow down now. Gastrointestinal, urinary, reproductive, immune systems. So uh, stress response is the way the controlling systems tell the control systems when to do that. On the other hand, uh, a number of changes in the environment are predictable because they're cyclic. They happen with a predictable period or predictable frequency. So, for instance, seasons, winters and summer, are predictable. Uh, Human bodies don't care much about lunar phases or moon phases of the moon or the tides or something like that. But a lot of our organisms live in environments in which that is important. And of course, the most important is the daily rhythm. There's several hours of darkness followed by several hours of light over and over and over and over again. So the day night cycle is the most important predictable change in the environment in which we live. So circadian system is the one that is primarily charged with preparing the body for the those changes, those predictable changes. Instead of waiting for, let's say, for dawn and then warm up and then go hunting or something like that, circadian system is going to prepare the body ahead of time. Our cortisol starts going up at about 4 a.m. or something like that, gradually telling all the control systems to ramp up, to raise the body temperature, raise the blood pressure, increase the heart rate, all of that stuff. So the moment when we wake up in the morning at dawn or whenever the alarm clock rings, we're ready to go. So being able to predict instead of just passively respond to the environment is the adaptive advantage of having a circadian system. All organisms on the planet have circadian rhythms, have lost it because they live deep in the ground and never come on the surface. Some of the bacteria are iffy, do they have them or not? But all the animals have them, plants have them, fungi have them. So, of course, humans have them. So, the most important uh, cue from the environment is the light dark cycle. So, perception of light is obviously the most important cue from the environment to synchronize to it to predict when the dawn is coming and when the dusk is coming. There are some other things in the environment that correlate with the light dark cycle. So, a lot of organisms, including humans, can respond to some other things. For instance, it's warmer during the day than during the night. So, most organisms can respond to temperature cycles. Um, there are changes in the intensity and the angle of the Earth's magnetic field. We can't do that, but some organisms can tune into that. Most organisms, including humans, can be synchronized to the regular cycles of feeding, like the regular meals. Uh, Social interactions can also tell the circadian system what time it is. So, light dark cycle is the most powerful and most important clue from the environment, but there are all these additional cues that can tell the circadian system what time of day it is. So, circadian system is partially endocrine, partially sensory, partially nervous system. It has some elements of all. Uh, First, it has to be able to sense the environment, and most important is light. It does not sense the light the same way with our eyes sense light for forming the image, because forming the image is a very specific task and it's not really good. What we need is light intensity. We don't need shapes and colors and movement. We need to perceive the intensity of light. So instead of the eye that makes an image, we need a light meter. And we do have a light meter in each one of our eyes in the retina. There are about 1,000 retinal ganglion cells. So those are not rods and cones. They're not apocrine cells or horizontal cells or bipolar cells or any of those. They're retinal ganglion cells. Those are the cells that project their axons all the way to the brain through the optic nerve into the optic tract and elsewhere in the brain. So those about 1,000, then millions of retinal ganglion cells in each eye, but about 1,000 of each is capable of measuring light intensity. The way they do it is by using a photopigment that's related to opsins that you see in rods like rhodopsin and the color opsins in the cones, and it's called melanopsin. And melanopsin is just like every other pigment, is going to be energized by light, by photons, and it's going to change its 3D shape, which is going to stimulate the cell. So that ganglion cell is going to send an impulse down the axon to the receiving centers in the brain. These receiving centers in the brain that come from these specific cells, there are like three or four of them. One has something to do with the mood. So having a light-dark cycle is important for proper mood. If you live in a dark cave, or they put you in jail and there's like constant bright light and almost like a light torture, you're going to get depressed. It's not going to be in a very good mood. Another center is for the pupillary reflex. When you encounter stronger light, your pupils get smaller. When it's darker, your pupils get higher. There's another function for which you require a light meter and not an image forming eye. But the most important for us right now is the circadian clock, which is suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus of the brain. Suprachiasmatic means that it's right on top of the chiasm, the optic chiasm. That's, remember, where the two optic nerves fuse and then separate into two optic tracts. Suprachiasmatic nucleus, each one of them, one on the left, one on the right, each one of them has about, I don't know, 10,000 neurons. And there's slight differences between different types of neurons in there, but that is the pacemaker of the circadian system in mammals, including humans. What does it mean to be a pacemaker? A pacemaker is a cluster of cells that has circadian rhythms of gene transcription and translation. They're core clock genes that are translated and transcribed and translated, and then the proteins are turning on and off each other. And so you have a cycle of about 24 hours. If you put pacemaker, or the whole suprachiasmatic nucleus, or just some cells, a single cell from a suprachiasmatic nucleus, in addition, give it nice nutrients and stuff like that, it will continue cycling forever as long as you can keep it alive. So its its rhythmicity is inherent. It's coming from the inside. It's not responding to anything in the environment, and it's inherent, innate. It is determined by the genes turning each other on and off. Every other cell in the body also has a clock. It has all those clock genes going on, but it's not working as well. If you take any other cell in the body and put it in a dish, you might see two or three cycles and then it goes away. This is the mechanism cannot continue forever. Those are peripheral clocks. Even red blood cells that don't have a nucleus have a little bit of a circadian cycle. There's that stuff still in the cytoplasm and it can cycle. So the a role of the pacemaker is to synchronize with the environment, so they'll perceive light dark cycles through those retinal ganglion cells, and then tell the rest of the body what time of day it is, and thus to turn on or turn off, or speed up or slow down their functions. So it's going to do it via various mechanisms of signaling. It's going to go through some of the nerve fibers to some organs. It's going to stimulate secretion of cortisol for some other, as a signaling molecule for some other organs. But probably the most important is melatonin. How does the suprachiasmatic nucleus lead to the release of melatonin? Uh, it has a couple of neurons, a couple of axons. One is going to superior cervical ganglia. They're kind of like high in the neck, which then projects another axon to the pineal gland. The pineal gland is then be told that way going to be told to start or stop the synthesis and stimulation and synthesis and secretion of melatonin, which is very important to remember that melatonin is secreted only in the dark. Perception of light, so the eyes, those ganglion cells, tell the suprachiasmatic nucleus, hey, it's light. Uh, that is going to trigger the signal into the pineal to stop secreting melatonin. So let's say you are sleeping in a nicely dark room with darkened windows, so you have really nice, good sleep, and you're churning out melatonin, and you wake up in the middle of the night, you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, and you turn on the light in the bathroom. What happens is your eyes are going to perceive light, will tell SCN, hey, it's light, which will tell the pineal, stop melatonin. And then you go back to bed, and your melatonin is now down. It's not synthesized anymore, or won't for a while, which means you can't fall back asleep, and it's not good for you because melatonin is also a strong um, immune booster. It's an antioxidant, and it's kind of important to have plenty of melatonin every night um, for our health. So, melatonin then gets secreted into the bloodstream and telling all sorts of other organs, hey, the night has started. Whatever you do at night, do it turn off at night or do it turn on at night, speed up or slow down, whatever you're doing at night, that's now time to do it. If there's no melatonin, then it's the opposite. So that's the most important signaling molecule for in the circadian system, telling everything and everybody. Circadian rhythms have, various properties. I have already mentioned that they are endogenous, meaning they are generating within the body and they're not a passive reaction to the environment. They are innate, which means there's a genetic basis for it. They're clock genes that are driving the cycles. Uh, they are self-sustained, so if you put a pacemaker in the dish, it's going to keep cycling forever. They're temperature compensated. Yeah, we are warm blooded, so our body temperature is kind of more or less constant. But in most other organisms, uh, it's not. Their body temperature is going to be about the same as the environmental temperature. And all the biochemical process in the body uh, act, uh, happen faster if it's warmer and slower if it's colder. So they act as thermometers. A clock that is sensitive to temperature is a great thermometer, is a really, really bad clock. So the mechanism, the way those clock genes are turning on and off each other, uh, contains the mechanism for temperature compensation. So the clock works the same with the same period and same frequency, no matter what the temperature is. Um, the rhythms that circadian rhythms, most of the time we are in the light dark cycles, are entrained, which means they're synchronized to the outside cycles, to the light dark cycles. If you put a human or another kind of organism in constant conditions, it's usually constant darkness. Um, those circadian rhythms are going to continue to cycle and driving all the other things in the body, the rhythm of body temperature, the rhythm of cortisol, the rhythm of melatonin, the rhythm of everything else. We're going to continue cycling, but the cycle is probably not going to be exactly 24. It's going to be close, 22, 23, 25, something like that, which is why it's called circa, the end, about a day. And there are mathematical reasoning why it shouldn't be exactly 24. If it's exactly 24, it's very difficult to entrain them. If they're close, then each morning the light is going to slightly reset it by a few minutes or an hour or something like that, and that is a relatively easy process to do. Those rhythms in constant conditions are called free running rhythms, right? Nothing is entraining them, nothing is synchronizing them, so they're running free. They're called free running rhythms, one word. Uh, the free running rhythms are going to have a period that is specific to that individual or that species. Most of the humans are a little bit longer than 24 hours, 24 and a half, 25-hour long, when they're in constant conditions, showing their free running rhythms. Uh, a, a light pulse, a single light pulse administered during that free running period in constant darkness is capable of resetting the phase of the clock. So the clock is going to have its beginning and the end. Let's say uh, at uh, at dawn, it starts turning on cortisol and body temperature and heart rate and blood pressure and stuff like that, and we can call that zero. And then there's going to be 24 hours. If you apply light pulses at different times of that phase, they're going to either phase delay or uh, phase advance the clock in order to reset it to the new time. Just like when you have your wristwatch and it's a little bit slow, you're going to reset it faster. You have to reset it up, right? You have to move it forward to reset it every morning. If it's a fast moving clock, you have to uh, reset it a little bit back every morning. So depending on what time you are resetting, is going to be how much you need to reset to get the correct timing. So when you look at peripheral clocks, which means every other cell in the body is just going to have that cellular machinery working in with the circadian rhythm, you're going to notice that some of the genes are not turned on, right? You don't need genes for neurotransmitters in the liver and vice versa. Some genes are expressed at all times. For instance, for myosin, for instance, for the proteins that make ribosomes. Uh, they're pretty constant throughout the day. And then you're going to see there's a set of genes in each cell that show a circadian rhythm of being transcribed and translated in other parts of the day when they're not. And those tend to be the key functional genes of that cell. So those are the genes that code for various detoxifying enzymes in the liver, or the genes for neurotransmitters and neurotransmitter receptors in neurons. So whichever are the genes that are key for the specific function of that tissue, of that cell, those are the ones that are going to be showing the circadian rhythm in expression. Things can go wrong. For instance, if you get on a plane and fly to Paris or to Tokyo, you are going to suddenly shift the environmental cycle by 6 or 7 or 8 hours. Now, the clock in your retina and clock in your suprachiasmatic nucleus is going to readjust, it's going to reset its phase to the new phase of the new environment pretty quickly within a day or two. And then it's going to try using cortisol and melatonin and neural uh, signals to tell the rest of the body to also reset to the new time, to the, let's say, Paris time. But it takes some time. Some organs are going to be relatively fast, and some are going to be relatively slow. Gastrointestinal system, which has its own intestinal nervous system, is going to be the slowest. It's going to be sluggish. The liver and intestine take weeks to reset to the new time. During that time, different parts of the body are not in sync with each other. One of the points of having a circadian system is to coordinate all the events within the body. So, for instance, a hormone is secreted at the time when the target cell is expressing the hormone receptor, and not at other times. There are going to be some enzymes that are going to be used by two different biochemical processes. So, one of those processes works during the day, the other one of those processes is working during the night, and that way those two processes are not competing between each other for that same enzyme. If you have most of the body on the Paris time, and some parts of the body are still on North Carolina time a week later, there's going to be desynchronization within the body. And that is what is called jet lag. That's why you feel sick. That's why you have problem not just sleeping, but you have stomach aches and all sorts of other things that make it very, very unpleasant. Of course, we didn't evolve for flying to Paris in a few hours, so we don't really have a good mechanism to do that. We have to kind of deal with jet lag and try to take melatonin supplements and particular timing and things like that. There are ways to kind of make it easier, but that's how it is. The thing is, we can get jet lagged without ever getting on an airplane if you work a rotating shift. If you work a rotating shift, you're constantly jet lagged. If you're working 1 week in the morning, 1 week in the afternoon, 1 week at night, or if it's even worse when it's going backwards, your body is constantly jet lagged. And people who work rotating shifts for long periods of time have much, much greater incidences of various diseases, including some, ulcers, heart attacks, some types of cancer like uterine cancer. And this is not good. A lot of you are going to work in the healthcare system, and being new to the healthcare system, you're going to be given night shifts or rotating shifts at first. Only you have to be very senior to get only days. If you can, at least get all nights and not rotating shifts, because you can completely reset your life to live during the night and sleep during the day, and coordinate with your family so they leave you alone and keep you in a dark room, but you put something, dark material over the windows, and kind of reset yourself for a few years while you're working night shifts. It's much healthier than rotating shifts. uh, Circadian system is implicated in some other disorders, including bipolar disorder, which is why lithium works for bipolar disorder, because lithium is one of the rare chemicals that can affect the circadian system. Melatonin can change the period, uh, heavy water can change the period, and lithium can change the period. Most other chemicals cannot change the period of the circadian rhythm. Can change the phase, but cannot change the period. So, um, diabetes, a couple of other uh, uh, psychiatric disorders are also now considered to be the diseases of the circadian system. There are some sex differences, not very big in humans, mostly in some other animals. But what is important is that there are age differences. When the kids hit puberty, so sex steroid hormones, either estrogens or testosterone, uh, kind of surge in the uh, circulation. They have the effect of phase delaying the circadian clock, which means making it later, which means that teenagers, adolescents, cannot fall asleep earlier in the night. It has nothing to do with screens or wanting to read or watch or play games or turn on the light. You can put them in bed and they're in a dark room and there's nothing else to do, and they're still tossing and turning and cannot fall asleep. It is their genetics telling them to stay awake longer. Of course, after 3 hours or 5 hours of sleep, they cannot wake up in the morning. They did not get sufficient sleep, and their circadian clock is telling their body to that there's another 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Why are you waking me up so early? And they are all grouchy. And then if they're 17, 18, they're driving cars, and it's 3 hours before their real wake up time, so they get in wrecks. Their uh, mood suffers, their grades suffer, because they're always sleep deprived, and they are constantly jet lagged by us, the society that puts them in school too early. Schools for middle and high schools should not start earlier than 8:30 or 9. And now that all this education is going on online, it is really ridiculous to start earlier than that. I mean, kids can get on Zoom at any time, and they can do asynchronous stuff whenever they want, even if that is 2 a.m. So that's one of the things that happens. So, once they hit their 20s, mid 20s, maybe late 20s, that whole, phase shift ends, and every individual kind of settles into their chronotype. Some people are larks. They wake up very early and go to bed early. Some people are owls. They wake up late and they go to bed late. It is not a matter of choice or decision, it is the genetics. We know actually exactly what are the sequences and changes, the sequences, little mutations in the clock genes that turn one into a lark or an owl. Some people are more flexible than others. Some are in between larks and owls. Some are extreme larks or extreme owls. The people who wake up at 4 a.m. or people who fall asleep at 4 or 5, 6 a.m. Those are kind of at the edges of being a pathology. But it is us as a society to figure out how to accommodate everybody's chronotype so everybody can be healthy and productive. Okay, so s- this is pretty much what I need to say about circadian systems. Um, there's a short and a long handout or notes. Short doesn't have exactly everything, but is easier and simpler. The long one has a lot of extra stuff. We should kind of figure out what is extra because I did not mention it here. Um, and there there's also a PowerPoint, which a lecture I was giving at NC State some years ago, and it's still up to date enough to be able to kind of follow with a long handout. Um, what is the difference between a circadian rhythm and circadian clock? Circadian clock is an organ, right? A tissue, a bunch of cells, and what they do is make a circadian rhythm of whatever physiological parameter you are, or behavioral parameter that you are measuring. When you're measuring, you do have to measure it for a long time, for over many days, and your computer is going to show it either as an actograph or as a strip chart. Circadian organization means uh, all of this, what I was saying about now, that there are multiple sensory inputs, multiple pacemakers that have to coordinate with each other, and then lots of peripheral clocks that may give some feedback back to the controlling systems about their state and the timing of their activity. Uh, Another interesting thing, because we are talking about different types of signaling molecules and how signaling happens in the nervous system and in the endocrine system, is that the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's the pacemaker of the clock, is one of those places where there is direct signaling via gap junctions between the cells because they need to synchronize with each other. Uh, Humans are not very seasonal. Our ancestors were seasonal, but we are not. And most other animals are seasonal, and how mammals, at least, know what time of year it is. So, when to uh, shed hair or molt feathers, when to get fat, when to migrate, when to make a nest, when to mate. Those kinds of things have to be seasonally appropriated, and how they know what season, how the bodies know what season is not by temperature because you have to predict it, right? You have to get started weeks before it's time. Um, is by measuring day length. Measuring day length is called photoperiodism. Photoperiod is the day length. And the way, at least mammals, measure day length is by measuring how long is melatonin secreted from the pineal. So in winter, there are long nights and short days. So the long night is going to mean that there's a very long time every day when there's melatonin in the system. So it's a long melatonin signal. During the summer, long days, short nights, a very short melatonin signal. This is what other parts of the brain can interpret as time of year and figure out when is it time to do seasonally appropriate things. We have some remnants of seasonality. If you look at statistics over large numbers of people, there is some seasonality in childbirth. If you have lots and lots of Facebook friends and you always say happy birthday to everybody, you're going to notice there are times of years when you're telling a lot of your friends happy birthday on Facebook, and other parts of the year when you don't have that many. So there's a little bit of a seasonality in human reproduction. One remnant of seasonality is seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal affective disorder is another disorder of the circadian system in which is essentially our body preparing us to hibernate. And since we are not hibernating anymore, we feel depressed. And it has to do with long nights, thus long melatonin signals telling us to shut down for the winter. Okay, I think I said everything I wanted about this. There's of course a lot more. There's a lot of links in additional readings if you're interested. If anybody's particularly interested, I can provide more resources. During the review session, we are going to go over specific things that I want you to know for the exam. But I hope you read those two uh, handouts and look at the PowerPoint and listen to this again and understand that everything in physiology that is important is timing. When things start, when they end, when they increase, when they decrease, and it's the controlling systems, the nervous, sensory, circadian, and endocrine, that tell the rest of the body, tell other organ systems what to do, when to do it. The most important thing is when to do what. And then some of those are going to be unpredictable, thus we have a stress response, and the others are going to be predictable, and circadian system prepares the body for those. Thank you.